It's that time again for some killer conversations all about D&D. Welcome back to Chat TPK, the podcast for everything geek culture. It's me, Mike, the DM of discussion here on the pod, and I couldn't be happier to be wishing a very warm welcome to any new listeners who are joining us this week, as well as say a humongous thank you to all of our regular listeners who have been tuning in for each and every episode so far. We really hope you're enjoying all of our geeky debates, and boy do we have another one in store for you today. Our main focus this week will be looking at the best monsters of Tier 1 play within D&D, so whether you're a player or a DM, please stay tuned for this. And rounding off our pod today will be another edition of Reality Radar, within which we'll be discussing all the highlights announced in the newest D&D books. Now, before I introduce today's awesome guests, please be sure to give us a follow on Spotify or the podcast platform of your choice so that you never miss an episode. And check out our YouTube channel for regular video content, as well as our gaming weekly stream. And if you haven't already, give us a wonderful rating to show everyone just how much you're loving the pod so far. With that very long bit of housekeeping done and dusted, I have the pleasure to welcome back some fan favourites. He rolls with advantage on charisma and spends every long rest reading. It is Martyn. Martyn, good afternoon or good evening. Are you well?
I'm back. I am. All the better for seeing you, Mike.
Oh, thank you very much. That's very kind. But it's good to have you. Obviously, you are very much a regular here on the pod, and one that has got a lot of good things to say.
Yeah, I do have a lot of things to say. Not all of them good, in fairness.
The majority, but yeah, I would take the point. I think I would also agree that statement about myself. But it's not just you we've got with us this afternoon. It's also another regular. And this person has expertise and insight, and he puts the role in play. It's Rick. Good evening, Rick.
Good evening, both of you. How are you?
Welcome. Yes, I'm very well. Very excited about today's topic. I've been thinking about this all week. And as mentioned, it is about our favourite monsters. Tier 1, which for those that are unaware of the whole naming system of tiers, Rick, Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 4, that's just to do with, like, in terms of the levels, like level 1 to 5 and so on, right?
No, they're what happens when your dungeon master meticulously plans an encounter for you and you ruin it with one spell.
Salty tiers. That's the last tier. Once you've progressed far enough, you are in the salt tier.
The salt tier. Fantastic. But yeah, so we are going to be looking at monsters that go up to CR5. So not insanely powerful, but actually you might find that some of the choices that we have chosen, despite their low CR, might be quite potent. Anywho, so we're going to be looking at just how they could be used in combat, maybe some tactics in which you can try and use them in encounters, both as a DM in which to use them and as a player in which to try and avoid and survive them. Yeah, I think actually I'm going to start us off this evening with the very first monster. It was a tough one. I mean, we looked on D&D Beyond, didn't we, at just how many monsters are C5 or CR5 or below, and wasn't it hundreds?
Yeah. There is. I'm actually just scrolling through our previous conversation to see exactly how many there were, because if I remember correctly, there were 86 pages with approximately 8 monsters per page. So you were talking hundreds within that CR range.
It was quite fun to read through, though. But even after reading through them all, there were 2 monsters I had in my mind, and I kind of did stick with my gut here. So the first one I'm going to mention is a fan favourite as well, I think, both within the actual TTRPG, and those who actually play Baldur's Gate 3 will recognise this creature, one of the earliest creatures they see in that game, and that is an intellect devourer. It is a walking brain with 4 legs, and it is pretty gruesome. Just to give you a bit of a insight into what it can do, it is like the pet of a mind flayer, so it has some telekinetic or telepathic abilities, should I say. It is a CR2 monster. It's got an armor class of about 12, which is quite low, but it hasn't got much armor. It's not incredibly dexterous. It only has a +2 for its dexterity, so that's why its AC is so low. It has got a speed of 40, which I think kind of works in its favor, allows it to get across the battlefield quite well. So that's good. It doesn't have eyes, as you look at it, being a brain. It hasn't got any eyes, but thus giving it blind sight, which I think is really, really useful. One of the most, I think, useful types of vision you can have, because you can't cast darkness on it. You can't obviously cast blind on it because it has blind sight. So there are some things that you can't really do to impact its ability to see you. And it has telepathy for 60 feet, so it can talk to you without a mouth as well. So have either of you come across this monster in your travels across the Saw Coast or beyond?
Yeah.
There's some famously relatively near the start of Dragon Heist. It's probably the one that I remember the most.
There's some quite early on in Undermountain as well.
Like Sam's not here today, and Sam was hoping to join us, but unfortunately he's unable to. But Sam is obviously one of our DMs, and he DM'd a game with me in which I think we had a mind flare basically beset his intellect hours on us, and at such a low level, it was a genuinely scary fight. Why it was so scary is because of the sheer abilities it has. Now, it has got multi-attack, which for a CR2 monster is actually quite impressive. Not that many monsters at that level of CR probably get some kind of multi-attack. It gets a claw, which is its main melee, melee weapon attack, as I say. But it also has this really, really cool ability called Devour Intellect, which allows it within 10 feet to make you to do an intelligence saving throw, and it will do some decent 2d10 psychic damage. And if you fail, you get to roll another 3d6, and if the total equals or exceeds the target's intelligence score, that score is reduced to 0. So you literally absorb that whole person's intellect. And am I right in saying without any intellect, you're pretty much brain dead, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, what can you do with 0 intellect?
You can dribble as an action, I think.
Is it like Feeble Minds? Is it similar to that?
Well, Feeble Mind only reduces it to 1, doesn't it?
Oh gosh. Okay.
So you can
it's
still
worse than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it says in the stat block you're stunned until you can bring your intelligence up from 0. So basically, you can do nothing, absolutely nothing. You are just existing.
Mm-hmm.
It's very powerful for the CR that it is, and it is incredibly scary for a lot of characters. Like a lot of characters, when you think that the save that it needs to make is a relatively uncommon save.
Yeah, intelligence. No one really, unless you're a wizard, it's not going to be high.
You lots of things will give you wisdom, dex saves, constitution saves, but intelligence is one that you don't see a lot. And like you say, unless you're a wizard, you probably don't have a massive stat in there. So it can be scary for a lot of your martial characters because there's a high chance they're going to fail that save. But it is equally scary for your wizards because intelligence is all they've got, really.
Yeah.
And if they do fail that save, because we know the dice are fickle, that's your character done.
So I'm trying to think a way in which you combat giving someone back some sort of intelligence, like enhanced ability would do that, where you could give them a point back in intelligence. Maybe putting an item on them that would increase intelligence. Like, how else could you combat this feature?
That's a very good question.
Because I was thinking about it and I was struggling.
Does Greater Restoration restore reduced ability scores? Yeah, Greater Restoration, a level 5 spell, can reduce a reduction to one of your ability scores, or remove a reduction. But you need to be level 7 to cast level 5 spells.
To get a 5th level spell. So that's quite later on. Because it's a CR2 monster, you'd expect that maybe to crop up slightly earlier, maybe in the game. So that's obviously in itself a very, very scary ability that the Intellect Devourer can do. But that is not the worst one. Body Thief is the one that really scares me and scared the bejesus out of my players when I used it in... I actually did a bit of homebrew adaptation to Descent into Avernus, and I had, because I've been playing Baldur's Gate 3, I had a Mind Flare ship, a Nautiloid, crash land in Avernus, and it was filled with Intellect Devourers. And although they were like level 12, a horde of Intellect Devourers was still pretty scary. And Body Thief was used twice. This is really cool abilities, and I'll read it out as follows. The Intellect Devourer initiates an intelligence contest with an incapacitated humanoid within 5 feet of it that isn't protected by protection from evil and good. So, if they're something like a paladin, maybe that's something like an aura they have or something they've got on them as an item. But generally speaking, not everyone's going to have that protecting them. If it wins the contest, the Intellect Devourer magically consumes the target's brain, teleports into their skull, and takes control of their body. Whilst inside a creature, the Devourer has total cover against attacks and other effects originating outside its host. The Intellect Devourer retains its intelligence, wisdom, and charisma, as well as its understanding of deep speech, its telepathy, and its traits. It then knows exactly what the creature knew, including all of its spells and languages. If the host body dies, the Intellect Devourer must leave it, and you can cast protection from evil and good to get rid of it. And I think you can also use Wish potentially to get it out as well. But even if the body dies, the Intellect Devourer is safe and comes out unharmed. They basically wear you like a puppet. Scary. Very, very scary. And it happened to 2 of my players. And I've never seen 2 people look so defeated, knowing that not only were they actually technically dead, but now I was controlling their characters to be used against the rest of the party. So that's one of the creatures that I thought would be brutal for even slightly higher level combats.
Yeah, well, if you get your body stolen by an Intellect Devourer as well, it takes some quite high level magic to then restore you to life, because you need to be whole for a lot of magic until like resurrection and stuff like that. I don't think Revivify can revive you if you're missing
the brain.
Your brain.
I think, doesn't it specify just the head? I think it specifies it has to have the head.
Okay.
So I'm sure. So you could potentially argue that one a little bit.
Well, it says this spell can't return to life a creature that's died of old age, nor can it restore any missing body parts.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. One of the things that I really like about this one is, you're right, if there's a swarm, the great monsters on their own, but they are great fodder monsters for bigger enemies. So say if you were fighting a Mind Flayer, for example, just having a few of these dotted around just to mix things up, just to throw in a little bit of chaos. And I think it just makes it fit narratively well, because they will devour your intellect, and then the Mind Flayer will eat your brain.
Literally.
And then there is no way back.
Yeah.
And it's gone.
You could also put one inside an enemy already. So say you run an encounter which is a bunch of ogres that are a CR2. One of them is weirdly intelligent. And when you finally kill that ogre, this thing pops out and tries to go for one of you.
Yeah. It's not just like, as I said with my players when I did it to them, it's not just the loss of a character, it's then, I think, having that person actively working against you. So it's double. It's like
a double whammy.
A double whammy, yeah. It is a double whammy. But yeah, so that's my first one, Intellect Devourer. If you haven't used it at home or haven't encountered it yet on your travels through the universe of D&D, then look out for it. Rick, what monster are you bringing to the discussion today?
I'm going to go with the opposite end of the scale. So Intellect Devourers are scary for your big dumb people and not so scary for your smart people. This creature, a Roper, is scary for your weak, squishy people and not as scary for your other people. So a Roper's a large, neutral, evil monstrosity with 20 armor class and 93 hit points. It's CR5. They live in caves and caverns throughout the Underdark. Voracious Ropers feast on whatever they can catch and seize. A roper eats any creature from underdark beasts to adventurers and their gear. A roper has an appearance of a stalagmite or stalactite, which often allows it to attack with surprise. The creature can move slowly, using thousands of sticky cilia beneath its base. It creeps up cave walls and along stone ceilings, finding the best position from which to attack.
If you're listening to this and this is a new monster for you, be sure to have a look at a photo or a picture of this on Google, because it really is. It is a monstrosity and it looks like one. It really is gross.
They are gross, yeah. So the main draw of a roper is it's an ambush predator. You could have it as just a random encounter in a cave, or you could set up to have people been going missing. You could scatter an area with gear. Someone's going to run in and go, ooh, there's free stuff on the floor. That's when the roper attacks with its grasping tendrils. A roper can have up to 6 tendrils at a time. Each tendril can be attacked. They have 20 AC and 10 hit points. They're immune to poison and psychic damage. Destroying a tendril deals no damage to the roper, which can extrude a replacement tendril on its next turn. A tendril can also be broken if a creature takes an action and succeeds on a DC 15 strength check against it. They make 4 attacks with their tendrils. They use their real attack, and then they make 1 attack with their bite. So I'm going to read these out of order, because the tendrils have a +7 to hit, 50-foot reach, and it grapples you if it touches you. Until the grapple ends, the target's restrained and has disadvantage on strength checks and strength saving throws, and the roper can't use the same tendril on another target. When it reels, it pulls each creature grappled by it up to 25 feet straight towards it. Once you get within 5 feet of it, it bites you for 48 plus 4 piercing damage, which, if you're a level 3 party, is quite a lot.
Yeah. So you mentioned at the start of this description of the monster that it is one that spellcasters are not going to enjoy fighting. The fact that it's a strength save to get out of its grasp, and that if you do get restrained, then you've got disadvantage on that save. A wizard, potentially a bard, most spellcasters, in fact, are really going to struggle to get out of this, and that's them pretty much done. Like, I'm thinking of a bard especially. The fact that those tendrils are immune to psychic.
You can't viciously mock its tendrils.
Yeah, exactly. And that's that's a go-to for a bard.
If you think a lot of casters are going to have, bare minimum, maybe 10 strength, possibly 8, if, people are min-maxing out on that. If you've got that 10, that level, so that you've got just a 0 modifier on that strength check, you've only got a 25% chance of passing that check. And that's if you don't have a negative modifier like a lot of spellcasters will do for strength.
That's quite worrying.
Well, it's actually less, because when you are restrained, you have disadvantage on strength and dexterity checks. Oh, just dexterity saving throws, actually.
Yeah. The only thing with this one that I think would make it significantly more scary, not that it is a pushover by any stretch of the imagination, the number of attacks that it gets. When you first hear it, you're like, oh my gosh, this thing gets 5 attacks, but only 1 of them can hurt you.
That's true.
Oh, the bite, yeah.
Yeah, and it can only do that once.
It can do that once.
If there was some variation on that where you could do something like you can interchange that, you've got 5 attacks, only 3 of which can be a bite. So you could use maybe a maximum of 3 or as few as 1 or none if you wanted to. I think that would probably bump this past our CR5 range, actually.
It would, well,
because of the pure damage output on that, yeah.
It's already CR5, so I'm scraping the ceiling.
Yeah.
I mean,
as is this creature.
It's multi-attack. As written, the multi-attack says the roper makes 4 attacks with its tendrils, uses reel, makes 1 attack with its bite. But yeah, if it did 4 bites, its bite does 4d8 plus 4. That is really, it could potentially do on some good rolling like 100 damage if it had 4 bites. So that would be a load of damage.
Max damage on that 1 bite's what, 36, I think.
48 is 32, yeah, plus 4 is 36.
Yeah, so once is enough. Thanks very much.
Yeah. No, great monster. I'll be looking to use that in a future.
My favourite place to put one would be put one either on the ceiling of a 50-foot high cavern, so that if your players do escape, they fall.
That's a
Or
great idea.
there's one in the Forge of Fury that is on the other side of a fast flowing river. That if you escape while you're over the river, you fall in the river and you get swept away. So it's a great one to add some environmental effects to and make it quite a dangerous encounter.
I find a lot of my encounters that sometimes if you've just got a flat map, there's not much deviation. There's not much.
Verticality.
Yeah, there's no verticality. It's all just very, very similar. The combat's the samey, but yeah, I think this would offer you a chance to mix it up. And yeah, that river idea sounds a really good way of splitting up the party a bit and ensuring that this monster survives that bit longer, especially against martial classes, which are actually probably the ones that will do the most damage to it and be able to survive longest, I think. So
Yeah. And I think that's where Rick was saying that's what makes it really so interesting. Pop it on the roof, and really, what your rangers and your spellcasters are probably the only ones that are going to be hurting it very often, because your fighters, your barbs, are going to be carrying what, 2, 3 javelins, something like that. Maybe the odd hand axe, unless someone's got a longbow or a crossbow knocking around. If it's 30 feet in the air, it's not going to be doing that much.
Yeah, its AC is 20 as well. So if you're attacking with your dex instead of your strength as a martial.
But even if it reels you the whole way in, so it gets you ready for a bite attack, you still got disadvantage because you're restrained, which is going to make getting that AC 20, even a barb could do reckless, I guess, and even that disadvantage out. But yeah, still, it's in the Roper's favour with such a high AC for sure, especially at lower levels. But yeah, no, really good monster. Thank you, Rick. Well, yeah, as I say, we'll look to try and use that and kill some people that are too hungry for loot, too hungry for their own goods. And Martyn, any monsters that you want to discuss today?
So, unlike you two, I am going to think today. I'm going to bring to the table a monster that has very, very little combat application, is not scary in many ways. It is a CR0 creature. First made an appearance in Tomb of Annihilation and has recently been slightly reimagined in Spelljammer, and that is the Chwinger, specifically the astronaut variation from Spelljammer. So it has no attacks. It cannot do any damage based on its stat block. It is not an angry creature. These are tiny elementals that, if you're nice to them, if they take a liking to you because you've got a nice haircut or you've got a nice shiny badge on your top or something like that, they may feel inclined to give you a nice little boon, which is the thing that I've really drew me to these creatures, because they are the kind of thing that can make fantastic encounters that basically don't succumb to violence. They can also be brilliant rewards for things. So I just wanted to look at it from a slightly different vein,
No, yeah,
because
I like
when
it.
we think of monsters, we think fighting, ooh, danger, but these ones are quite nice. So they also have the ability to protect themselves. So, like rogues, they have evasion. So, if you are trying to kill these nice little creatures for some reason, it's going to be a little harder to do because they've got the ability to take half damage even if they fail a dex save. They also are able to take shelter within nature, so they can basically just phase into a rock, and now they're just inside the rock, so you're not going to get to them,
Wow,
stuff like that. They
that's
do
pretty
have
good.
some limited spell casting, but they're all basically it's buff spell casting. So they've got guidance, pass without a trace, resistance, stuff like that. The most important aspect of them, the one that really drew me to it though, is once a day, the Chwinger has the ability to target a humanoid that it can see within 5 feet and give it a supernatural charm of the DM's choice. Now, the reason that I chose the astronaut variant of this one is because it gets 2 additional options compared to the original Chwinger. So the 2 additional options that it gets is the Charm of Air Bubbles, which allows you to cast the Air Bubble spell as an action, and you can do that 3 times before the charm is used up. It also
Okay,
gives you the option to use Charm of Instant Tools, where you can magically conjure a set of artisan tools, navigator's tools, thieves' tools, things like that, and once you use them, they go. So these are temporary boons that can be very, very useful given the circumstance. The ones that you get in the original Dungeon Master's Guide from the original version, frankly, are also great. Some of them are fantastic. So you've got Charm of Dark Vision. You can probably guess what that one does.
Yep.
But other ones, Charm of Featherfall, Charm of Heroism, which is the equivalent of quaffing a potion of heroism. They can
Charm of
do
Vitality, is that one of them?
Charm of Vitality is indeed one of them. Charm of the Slayer is probably my favorite one there. So one sword in your possession becomes either a dragon slayer or a giant slayer for the next 9 days. So at the right 9 days.
Wow.
Many of these things are maybe like 1 use or 2 use. Some of them, the Charm of Featherfall, for example, lasts for 10 days. So you've got Featherfall on you for 10 days. You do whatever you want.
Which in
But
some
similarly,
campaigns could be a long, long time.
right? So similarly, that Charm of the Slayer, 9 days. If this happens at the right point in a campaign, it can really change the direction and the course of combat. And I like them very much. I also like the art style, the feel of them. I don't know why. Just the principle and the concept of them always makes me think of Studio Ghibli. And you've got like the little soot creatures, and those ones that are in the forest during a couple of them. They just make me think of those creatures. They're strangely not fairies. They're not fae
They
in
look a
any
bit
way. They
fey.
are
They do look a bit fey.
elementals.
They do
Yeah,
look a
so
little bit
you'd
fake.
look at them and you go, that is a fae, but they're not. They're elementals. But despite that, they do have that general vibe. I think
like
it
that
was.
it says they ride around on space guppies as well, which is cute.
Yes. Yeah, the art for the astronaut one is very cute. It is sat atop a space guppy fishing for smaller space guppies. It is very sweet. Rick, you mentioned earlier when we were talking about this the other day that there is potentially, depending on your DM, a little bit of leeway with these because they are elementals. If you have a nice enough DM, conjure minor elemental, stuff like that, you might be able to just pop some of these into existence and start stacking boons.
Yeah, I mean they challenged it. The CR0. Why not?
Well, because you can get some absolutely great boons from it.
yeah.
That's why not.
That's what DMs love doing, giving their players fantastic items to try and break their campaign with. I mean, having come across Tringers before, as you say, in Tomb of Annihilation, they were a very sweet little creature that actually gave a really nice RP encounter when my party met them in Oralunga. But yeah, this new version is absolutely adorable, and I do like the two new little boons, the sound of them as well.
Stats wise, it's the same. It's really just the flavor of them being in space, I suppose, in a more slightly technologically advanced situation.
Yeah, and you mentioned the air bubble. Obviously, that it is in space, so you need that to kind of not die in space.
Yeah,
But again, it could be used underwater as well. So that has some applications, even in somewhere like the Sword Coast, would be all right, wouldn't it?
it would.
But yeah, nice. That's a very, very good creature. I'm glad you brought it to today's pod. My second monster today is that of a rust monster. Only a C CR half. It's a very, very low rating monster. 27 hit points for a half. AC 14, speed 40. So good speed again. Good for getting around the battlefield. But the reason why I like the rust monster is because it has got the ability to rust metals. Any is it non-ferrous metals or ferrous metals? I think
Ferrous metals.
yeah. Any ferrous metals it can just destroy. For instance, it can rust metal. This is one of its abilities. Rust metal. Any non-magical weapon made of metal that hits the rust monster corrodes. After dealing damage, the weapon takes a permanent and cumulative -1 penalty to all damage rolls. So if you've got like a short sword, after dealing damage 6 times to that sword's pretty gonna be next to useless. If its penalty drops to -5, here we go. Here's actually where the short sword would have been destroyed before that point. If it drops to -5, the weapon is destroyed. Non-magical ammunition made of metal that hits the rust monster is destroyed after dealing damage. So, I mean, does people tend to pick up bolts and arrows? Or is that more for like javelins?
So technically you should, otherwise you'll run out.
Yeah.
It depends whether you're ammo tracking or not.
The
'Cause
rule
if
is you can generally recover half.
about half, yeah. So yeah, you should.
Yeah.
I think the reason why you like this creature is probably the reason why most players would hate to encounter one.
Yeah.
Because they do form a significant challenge in terms of, frankly, if nothing else, gold.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have to replace that mundane item. Not too bad when you're talking about a dagger or a short sword, but when you've got someone in heavy armor,
Like plate or
and
chain,
they've rusted away your heavy armors, that we know your top end of your heavy armors, what, £1.5 grand?
Yep.
Like, that's going to suck to replace.
So the antennae that it has on it at the front of its body, because it's a strange looking like insect kind of creature. It is a monstrosity after all, so it is a humongous insect. The antennae that does the rusting, it does need a dexterity saving throw, so it's not certain to hit. DC is only 11, which I think for most creatures, most players, unless again they are a spellcaster that hasn't really put much in dex, they might struggle. It could be very, very dangerous for those that are wearing, as you say, the heavy armors that could potentially get corroded. Just looking at the second part of the antennae, it says if the object touches either metal or a metal shield being worn, it takes a permanent penalty to the AC, so it does reduce that as well, just like it rusts the weapons. Armor reduced to an AC of 10 or a shield that drops to a +0 bonus is then destroyed as well. So it's really, really not going to be very useful to your AC if you were to lose it. You'd
which for a shield you only have to be hit twice.
Yeah.
And it's just gone.
Yeah. If the object touched is a held metal weapon, it rusts as described in the rust metals trait. So as I said previously, so it has the ability, as Martyn says, to just completely wipe out your mundane items. It does specify non-magical. So if it is magical, I don't think it can have that effect.
Yeah, doesn't do anything to magical items, which is frankly good because
they're rare.
Even in higher level play, one of them's maybe not that scary. You're usually going to find these en masse, though. So if you come across 4 or 5 of them, even if you've got great decks, there's a chance that you'll fail that save at some point, and you're unlikely to have every single item worn or carried in the party at that point to be magical. So it's going to get someone.
Mm-hmm.
They encourage clever play, which I quite like. You've got to suddenly stay away from them and throw wooden stuff at them.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, you could like use like wooden spears and stuff and makeshift weapons, and yeah, they're typically found underground. So if you're doing a campaign which is underground, like something like is the Mad Mage underground, and Tales from the Yawning Portal features a lot of stuff from underground as well. So that's something you may encounter. Say, for instance, you are overrun by this and you wanted to kind of like hole up somewhere. If you've got a big metal wall or big metal door between you and it can go through a 1 foot cube. It can touch and destroy a 1 foot cube. So that wall is not going to last very long. So yeah, wooden walls and wooden doors are the way to go against these creatures.
They're difficult to get away from in general because they can smell your sword. If it's within a certain distance of it, it knows where you are.
30 feet, yeah. And it's got a speed of 40, which, again, at low-level play, it's a CR half. Low-level play, that's faster than pretty much everything. Unless you're maybe a barb
or something.
Or tabaxi, yeah. But even if you're barb at low level, wouldn't get fast movement to level 5, so...
If you're running a campaign with a primitive tribe of creatures that use wood and bone weapons, say lizard men or goblins, and live in caves, it would be quite a fun twist to an encounter to have at one point the goblins you're fighting pull up this rope which releases some rust monsters.
Instead of the stereotypical wolves and dogs and stuff, they've just got pet rust monsters in the back of the cave.
Yeah, fantastic. But yeah, I think the reasons why I like this one is quite obvious. And yeah, if you encounter them, enjoy losing your stuff. Rick, you've obviously gone with the Roper. What's your second one?
Mephits.
Mephits. Any
Mephits of
particular
all
one?
shapes and sizes.
Ooh.
I am essentially a mad summoner, and there are Mephits everywhere.
Nice.
They are elementals again.
Yep.
CR between 1/4 and 1/2. So I've got one of each flavour up here, but just pick whatever you like.
Mm-hmm.
So the Dust Mephit, which I have up right here, is composed of earth and air. Dust Mephits are drawn to catacombs and find death morbidly fascinating. They have an AC of 12, 17 HP, 30-foot fly speed, and they can innately cast Sleep once per day. They have claws, which do 1d4 plus 2 damage, so average of 4. So they're not very good, and they have a breath that makes you go blind if you fail a DC 10 saving throw for 1 minute, repeating the save at the end of your turn. So they're not good. They're not like, you're not going to meet a Mephit and be worried about it. But if you're trying to do something and there are Mephits everywhere, they're going to get in your way, they're going to be annoying. Some of them can summon more of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're great little guards for wizards' towers because they can fly away and warn others.
Mm.
They're essentially chaotic goblins with wings, which...
They sound like a pain in the arse.
Yes.
They can put you to sleep. They can blind you. They have a death burst.
Yes, they do. Yeah, which also makes you go blind for the Dust Mephit.
The dust one, and I think the fire one obviously explodes with fire and so on and so forth. But yeah.
The mud one makes you restrained, and so does the breath.
So like nasty little pests. And being a CR half, you could probably get a few of those on the battlefield. Yeah, just to run amok. And as you say, you're not worried about being harmed. You're not worried about being killed by them. But it's just like, bugger off. Like you're just yeah. Like, I can squish you like a bug. Just leave it alone. But yeah,
the D&D equivalent of a fly flying around your kitchen.
Yes.
Go away. I think one of the best things about these is with the summoner variants that you mentioned there, that chance to be able to summon more of them and potentially summon 4 more.
Yeah, 1d4, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a chance, there's 20-25% chance, I think, to summon 4 more. That can very quickly go from an irritant to potentially dangerous.
Yeah. And then also it's quite a fun bit of in-combat roleplay to go, the Mephit draws a circle on the ground in its own mud. It raises its fists at you and it goes, I'll show you when my brothers get here. And then nothing happens. And you squish it.
Oh, it happens to the best of us. The fact they've got flight speed is pretty useful. As you say, they can get away from any sort of martial character. Not the highest AC, only 12. So quite easy to hit.
A bit of HP again for a low CR creature. They've got about 20, 22.
And it says languages. Languages Auran, I assume that's relative, and Terran, that's relative to the type of Mephit you have as well. So if it's fire, is it probably Ignan and so on?
Ignan, Auran, Terran, Aquan.
But would you, for flavour, probably want to give them a bit of common anyway? Well,
yeah, maybe. Flavour's free. You can have them make threats. If one of your characters speaks one of these languages, they can understand like 1/4 of the Mephits, which is quite fun. And the Mephits can communicate with each other because each one speaks 2, because a Mephit's a combination of 2 elements. So smoke is fire and air, for example, and magma is earth and fire.
Nice.
So they can talk to one another.
Yeah. And a CR creature that can cast Sleep, which is what, 4d8, if I'm not mistaken, 5d8. 5d8. Yeah, so they roll 5d8, which even just rolling half of that is 20. Like a wizard at 3rd level is probably going to be hovering between 18 and 22, roughly, aren't they? So
it depends on how you play them. Like, we all know that the monsters know what they're doing. And these creatures, while not incredibly intelligent, are slightly sub-average. So they're probably of a similar intelligence to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't use that until this person has been hurt a bit. So you maybe wouldn't open the encounter with that ability.
Yeah. And you probably want to blind them so you get advantage on your attacks, just to make sure you do hit with that claw attack. Yeah. So if you have a little horde of these, you could play quite smart and actually pick what could be a quite easy encounter for the party.
Yeah. If those debuffs start stacking, things will change very quickly.
Well, yeah, if you get restrained, you then have disadvantage on the dexterity saving throw to not be blinded. So then you both. It all adds up, and
if they death burst and blind you, those martial characters are going to have disadvantage. Yeah, so it can really start to stack, as you say. Yeah, very simple creatures, but actually, quite effective and a nice idea. Thank you, Rick.
One of my favourite encounters I ran with them is I had about 5 or 6 in a room that were all flapping around one of the party members that something had happened to them, and the party, in a moment of chaos, had posted them through the letterbox of the wizard's tower that they were trying to infiltrate. They posted him through the package slot, and then the Mephits were all gathered around him, and they decided, actually, it's probably time to go and get him back. We've had our prank, but the Mephits wouldn't let them near them. They kept going blind and being restrained and falling asleep.
Just being absolute dicks then, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's their role. That's their role for RP for sure. I can see that. Nice. Thank you. Martyn, last monster for today's monster discussion.
So my second creature today is bringing even more love to the elemental monsters. I think this is the 3rd or 4th elemental creature that we've discussed so far. It is one of the monsters that has kind of recently been revamped in some of the newer books, but it is the original, the now legacy version of the creature that I'm going to talk about, and that is the flail snail. So this flail snail, as I say, is an elemental. It's a CR3, so it's not massively deadly or dangerous. But when we look in a bit more detail at many of its abilities, it's actually a lot more dangerous than you would think in certain circumstances. So, some of its key factors: it has an anti-magic shell. So this shell that this snail has gives it advantage against saving throws against spells, and any creature making a spell attack against the snail has disadvantage on the roll. And if the snail succeeds on a saving throw against the spell or the attack misses, an additional effect might occur. You would decide that effect by rolling a d6. On a 1 and 2, if the spell is an AoE, it has no effect. If it targets only the snail, it has no effect and is reflected back at the caster using the spell slot level, save DC, attack bonus, and a spell casting ability of the caster. So when that wizard throws something at you, this snail can potentially just ping it straight back at you.
Like Eldritch Blast is going back at your face.
Yep, straight back at you.
Nice.
Yep. That's on a 1 and a 2. If you rolled a 3 and a 4, there's no effect. The attack happens as normal. If you roll a 5 and a 6, however, the snail shell converts some of the spell's energy into a burst of destructive force, and then each creature within 30 feet of the snail must make a DC 15 Constitution save or take 1d6 force damage per level of the spell that was cast, or half as much if they succeed. So depending on what spell it is that was targeted it, that could be, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, potentially all the way up to like 9d6, depending on the spell, to everyone within 30 feet.
I mean, I don't know why. My mind went straight for Fireball then. That's 3rd level spell, so that's 3d6. And then I've just realised, hang about, it's immune to fire, so maybe not Fireball. But if you're a wizard, you can change the element. But
your party may not know that. They may find out by casting Fireball. Yeah. And of course, then its anti-magic shell will come in extremely clutch for it. Now, that's one of its most interesting features, this anti-magic shell, but it's not how it attacks. This is just part of its defense. It's a very robust defense. One of the things that makes it equally interesting from an offensive position is this flail snail has 5 tentacles. These are its flails, basically. Its antennae have got like spiky, bulbous ends. And it can make as many attacks as it has flails. So at the start, this creature can make 5 attacks in a turn. They're not massively damaging. It's 1d6 plus 3 each time, but doing that 5 times, if they all hit, is still not going to be pleasant. Yeah, it loses a tentacle, a flail, when it receives 10 or more damage in a single turn. They do regrow eventually. Not by the end of the combat, though. It does take a few days.
Yeah.
It has some additional things. It can withdraw into its shell, giving it a +4 bonus to its AC, and it can pop back out as a bonus action. So that means that it doesn't have to waste its action to come back out, which is nice. And considering that it has a 16 AC as its base, that would put it up to a 20.
The CR3 is pretty good. Yeah.
And because its shell has all of these anti-magic properties, if it's in an anti-magic zone, if it's predominantly casters that it's up against rather than your marshals, suck back into your shell, let them kill themselves.
It's a little bit, the rule on the flail tentacles is a little bit upsetting. That when it loses all its tentacles, it retracts into its shell and begins wailing, which can be heard for 600 feet, stopping only when it dies 5d6 minutes later.
Oh, that's sad. That's really sad.
It's a wailing flail snail.
So essentially, when it loses its flails, is it almost certain to die unless you? I think it mentions in the stat block, such as regenerate being used upon it.
It has 52 hit points on average and 5 tentacles, and it will lose a tentacle each time it loses 10 HP. So unless you're hitting straight 10 every time, it's probably going to be dead when it's done anyway. But as Rick rightly said, if it loses all 5 and somehow has still got 1 or 2 HP left, it's in dire straits. It's just going to go home and cry. Until it dies.
Very sad. I'd almost be, if I was DMing this, I'd almost probably just make sure that was the way in which it died, just to leave a little poignant note for my players to make them feel bad for killing the poor snail. The poor snail. Oh, anything else as part of its abilities or traits at all?
So it has something called scintillating shell. Its shell can emit bright light, which will give creatures disadvantage on attack rolls against it, and does have the ability to stun creatures with that same effect on a wisdom save. So it does have a little bit of utility in there too. In all, I just think that I think it's an interesting creature. I think it's one that parties, especially well-balanced parties that aren't, too caster heavy, shouldn't really have much of a problem with. But even the ones that have that ability, it's got a counter for almost everything. That boost for AC is going to help you. Hitting 20 is never easy on your attack rolls. And if you're a caster, to be fair, if you're a caster, I think this has got the upper hand.
Yeah. It hasn't got great speed, so
it doesn't. It is a snail. It is a snail.
Yeah. It's got a reach of 10 though. Has got a reach of 10. That might help it with some stuff like opportunity attacks. If you're in a small enclosed space, scintillating shell does kind of give it a little bit of it's even though for one turn, it is one turn that it dazzles them, isn't it? For that ability.
So it's bright light, and when it's activated, they have to do a wisdom save or be stunned until the light ends, which is the end of the snail's next turn. By which point it will have had the ability to do something else. It can't do that again because you can only use it once per shot or long rest. So it does mean though that it will have been able to stun you, move, get into its shell, or move and attack you, that kind of thing.
So like it could be used as like a retreat tactic or something, or
potentially.
No, and obviously it being a wisdom saving throw, if you've got the martial characters up close, that's not necessarily a stat they may necessarily be super high in, so that kind of works in its favor maybe.
Yeah, you don't get that many people. Obviously, your clerics and your rangers, you're going to have that wisdom. For everyone else, it's not that important of a stat. Even many of your casters, sorcerers, bards, warlocks, you're not going to see massively high wisdom on them unless there's like a reason that the player wanted that.
I think the most useful wisdom skill is probably perception, isn't it? Apart from
perception,
apart from that,
insight is wisdom as well.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, if you're doing like an RP heavy session, then that could be quite useful. But yeah, no, really cool, interesting, and that's the legacy. Do you know what the main differences are between that and the newer version?
Yes. So the new version, the anti-magic shell, instead of you rolling a dice for it, they've basically just condensed it so that it's not a chance. It is slightly lesser, in my opinion. It has basically combined 1, 2, 5, and 6 into a singular ability that's just not quite as good. But I like the fact with this one that there's a chance that it doesn't do anything. I like the fact that we leave it to the dice. I like that 3 and 4 is no effect on its anti-magic shell.
Well, the non-legacy one explodes every time a spell attack roll misses as well.
Yeah.
So you are, with the non-legacy one, you are actually more likely to kill all your friends accidentally.
Fantastic. That does sound like that would make for a very interesting moment in your campaign.
I like the idea of making a character who's a very paranoid wizard, and in your backstory have that there's a flail snail chasing them, and they can't do anything about it, but they're really slow.
They wake up every morning and I can see it on the horizon.
Yeah.
There's a funny, like, it's probably on YouTube, but I know it was on Rooster Teeth as well before it shut down. They had $1 million, but you have this snail, which if it ever touches you, it kills you.
Yeah.
And you never know where it is, and it's similar sort of thing to that. But I would definitely take it because there are places where snails can't go. So
it is much easier to put a normal garden snail inside a Tupperware box than it would be with a flail snail.
What sort of size would this flail snail even be?
These are large. They're
wow.
big.
It's a big snail.
Yeah.
They're massive. But yeah, fantastic flail snail. So hopefully at home you've enjoyed listening to 6 of our favourite up to CR5 creatures. We probably will look to revisit the world of monsters once more within D&D and look at even more challenging monsters that are available. Maybe even at some point going up to all our CR20 and beyond legendary creatures. I'm sure there's lots that we could say about that. But we'll finish our episode today with a bit of Reality Radar. Reality Radar is the opportunity for us to let you know each and every week some of the interesting things that are happening within the world of both D&D, video games, films and TV. And we have got an absolute doozy of a topic to discuss with you today. Rick, Martin, are you excited for the announcement of the new D&D core rulebooks?
Yeah, very much so. I'm of two minds, personally.
Okay.
I don't like change, but at the same time, this is, a continuation and in many senses, something that's been needed in 5e for a while. So I am glad to see it coming. We'll see how well I take to it when it arrives.
Sometimes change is good.
Always like more options, and there have been some glaring sort of inadequacies. I don't mean inadequacies, I mean like...
just gaps, isn't it?
Gaps, yeah, in D&D.
Inefficiencies.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of internal balance between things. I'm hoping they'll address that. Might be nice.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it makes me feel old knowing that the 5th edition, the current books that we've been playing with, 10 years. Wow, that's a long time ago. Would you say that this is going to be such an overhaul that it's going to, be a shift like 3.5 to 5e was, or is it literally is it a smaller one than that?
Much.
Yeah, it's more like 5.5, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even go that far. if we look at the difference between 3 and 3.5, I'd say that the changes that they've made are less. I'd maybe even just call it 5.1.
Okay.
Oh.
Minimal.
Which is great, because they promised that, didn't they? They promised that backwards compatibility. It's what everyone was not worried about, but they were like, oh, we're going to have this whole new edition thing all over again, where they've come out and just gone, yeah, some things are changing, but most of it's not.
Some sort of continuity going there, which is good. So yeah, even if you do pick up the new ones, as you say, it's going to be completely compatible with all your old adventure books, so no need to worry in that regard. There obviously are 3 core rule books. You've got the Player's Handbook, which is going to be coming out on September the 17th. I think if you are a master tier subscriber on D&D Beyond, you can get that sooner. I think a week sooner, which is pretty good. I think we've discussed this as a group about whether we should be buying these or not, whether it's the digital purchase or it's a physical one. The bundle, which is a physical digital one that you can get, it's only, or you can only do that as a bundle in America, can't you, currently?
No, you can do it as a bundle here, but you can't do it through D&D Beyond. You've got to do it through the D&D Wizards website rather than D&D Beyond. And frankly, not worth it, in my opinion.
No.
Because it's £180.
Yeah, it doesn't save you any money.
Yeah, £180. And conversely, it's also $180. So if you do use pounds sterling, you're getting the worst of that deal.
So if you have a family member that lives in America that you want to have your book shipped to, you could save £36-ish.
$227.
Wow.
That's how much £180 currently is. So we're getting mugged off here in the UK. I appreciate they've got to ship them, but I assume we're still paying shipping anyway, aren't we? For ordering. Oh, okay. Well, cheers for that, Wizards of the Coast. Appreciate that. But anywho, we've obviously got the Player's Handbook, which, as I said, is September. That's the first of the 3 that's going to be coming out. Then we will have to wait a couple of months for the Dungeon Master's Guide. I don't know. I kind of feel like the DMG probably should have come out first. No?
Well, this is like I was saying before, 5.1. The things that have changed are predominantly in the Player's Handbook.
Yeah.
While the DMG is being updated, it's being updated to support DMs more than the previous Dungeon Master's Guides have, where a lot of the mechanics, the majority of the mechanics that have changed, are in the Player's Handbook.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this one comes out November 12th. Again, if you are a Master subscriber on D&D Beyond, that would be 1 week earlier. And then the final book of the 3 is the Monster Manual. Apparently with over 500 monsters in. Quite a few, I imagine, that aren't in the current edition of the Monster Manual. Do you think they're going to be drawing upon things like Volos and Mordekainen's? And yeah. Does that mean anything prior to this is legacy now, or
perhaps?
Yeah, when they come out, just like the Flail Snail that I was just talking about.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? Anything that they bring out a new edition of, the old ones are still there, but this is the new one. This is the current one. The rest are legacy.
I hope they pull some stuff from the old Libris Mortis from 3.5, one of my favourite ever books, just full of undead and various horrible undead things for an undead setting.
Rick, I didn't realise you liked undead.
No?
Just a bit of information regarding that comment. We all play in a Curse of Strahd campaign, and unfortunately, am I okay to say this, Martyn?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, your Martyn's character is a Twilight Cleric, and was it Divine Intervention?
It was indeed. Failed the first roll, but some clutch inspiration got me a 1 on my Divine Intervention roll.
D100, you got a 1. That's fantastic. Yeah. And what was the actual thing you requested?
I requested for Saluna to rid the Amber Temple of all undead, because we'd just been attacked by several different variations of undead.
Flame skulls and ghouls and ghasts, I think, and Rick plays a character who actually isn't undead, but what's your flavour, Rick, for your character?
He was a priest of Merkel, and then he was significantly haunted by his entire family being killed but they didn't pass on to go to Merkel. They stayed with him, and now he sort of, has waifs and strays of people that haven't passed through to the afterlife, following him around and whispering in his ear, mind, whatever. So when the temple was rid of all undead, that's the first time in his life he's ever heard silence.
He's become friendless. Well, apart from the party. Apart from the party. Anywho, before I dig a hole, even greater. So I was going to ask you, gentlemen, could you? I'm going to suggest one thing that I've really taken from the new player's handbook. Obviously, we don't know the official stuff, what's in there currently, but they have been giving us dribs and drabs of information about what's likely to be in there, or actually what is going to be in there in small details. So, can I ask you one impression that you've got from the information they've released? The thing I would like to mention is mastery, weapon mastery. That makes the martial characters just actually so much more, it gives them so much more variance, because as a fighter and Barb fan, it does get very monotonous doing the same thing every single encounter, and having that mastery just opens up different aspects to using your weapons in different ways, to getting around the battlefield and setting up different combos in different ways, and it puts you on a bit more of a level playing field with that of spellcasters who have so much variance of their spells. So that's something I'm looking forward to.
Well, that brings me very neatly to what I'm looking forward to, Mike, because my favourite classes are spellcasters, and they've given the spellcasters even more variance, because the new spell lists have got about 400 400 spells in there, so there's a lot more variance in there. As we know, with the current spell list, you'll probably pick the best 5 every time you play.
Yeah.
But the fact that
you enjoy your martial crumbs from the caster table.
I absolutely agree with what you're saying. That weapon mastery I think it's not only a smart move, but it makes sense. It stops things stagnating for martials a little bit more. It seems interesting, which is the key thing. But I like that they are reimagining all the classes, not just the ones that needed the attention.
Yeah, every single class has had some sort of aspect reworked, and different features and abilities that happen at certain levels have been changed throughout, just to make it a bit more, in some cases fairer, in some other cases a bit more exciting to actually use. Barb, we all would agree, was a class that needed a lot of attention, but yeah, every class in some regards has had some tweaking, and they've obviously had to put all of the previous subclasses into 4 new ones. They're all, I think Barb's got Berserker still, but the other ones, they've all got different names, haven't they? But they're all...
Path of the World Tree is very, very good.
Yeah.
Are they more like accumulations of other ones, like mishmashes?
They're sort of like damage, tankiness.
Okay.
Sort of split that way. I don't know what the other 2 are for the Barb. I know they've got Berserker and World Tree.
They've got 48 subclasses, and when you think about some of the things that we've had in the past, where you've got some extremely underwhelming subclasses, I'm thinking about, is it the Beast, the Ranger one, where they could have an animal companion, the Beastmaster? That was very underwhelming when it first came, before Tasha's did something to try and tweak that a little bit. Some of the fighter subclasses were a bit trash.
Some of the druid ones,
to be honest,
I don't particularly like using. A bit underwhelming as well.
So hopefully there's some gold in there. I imagine there's probably ones that people will still steer clear of, because they're probably not great. But I think there's the general moral of the story here. There seems to be more choice.
I think there are general play styles that people tend to gravitate towards more to, and the play styles that some subclasses kind of meet are the ones that won't get picked as much. That's just going to be the way it's probably always been, I guess, throughout all the editions. Rick, what thing from the core book have you seen that you like sound of, or something you're looking forward to?
So, some quality of life changes. They are putting classes' spell lists into the spell description, instead of you having to flick all the way through the book to find them. That's good.
That really helps.
They're changing the way surprise works, I saw the other day, to make it not so much that you can't do anything in the first round if you get surprised. But if you are surprised, you get disadvantage on initiative rolls.
Okay, that makes
So instead of it going around all the way and your party just wailing on people, you could still have the more dexterous and the more fast reacting enemies still react. And my favourite change actually is what they're doing with rogue sneak attack. So instead of just piling on the damage dice, you can take a couple of your damage dice away to make different effects happen.
Nice. Yeah.
So you can poison enemies, you can blind them, eventually you can knock them unconscious if they fail a con save.
Yeah,
and that could all be on top of mastery weapons, couldn't it? So you could. So that's some great combos that you could line up with as a rogue. Yeah, that sounds very exciting, actually. Awesome. Now, other than the core D&D books, there are other things happening in the world, although this has kind of taken up a lot of our attention over the last week or so. There have been some showcases. The Xbox Showcase was in the last few weeks, and also Nintendo Direct, which we obviously could talk about, but actually I think that there's so much information regarding what has been announced. I think we're going to save that for another pod. So if you are into your gaming, be sure to check back with us maybe in a week or so after this pod has been released, and we'll give you the lowdown in a bit more detail, not haphazard or rushed, as to what to expect both from Nintendo and Xbox within the next year or so. Just one thing that I will mention from the Xbox One, which I know you'll love, Martin, new Fable.
Yes. Very excited. Been waiting a very long time for it.
Bloody chicken chaser.
The thing that we were always very uncertain of about this one is Lionhead Games, who made the original Fable games, don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So this new Fable is being created by the team that brought us Forza Horizons. So we can expect it to have significantly better graphic expectations than previous Fable games, kind of definitely towards the top end of what the machines are capable of. Mm-hmm. And while they aren't really known for making this genre of games, what little we've seen about the game so far looks fantastic. Yeah. They seem to have kept kind of the ethos and the feel of the game from the previous versions, which seems fantastic. So very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, I just thought out of all the things that are on there, that was something maybe was worth a mention. So yeah, as I say, we'll go through that with a fine-tooth comb and pick out all the good bits for you in another pod. As we have had a lot of discussion today, and I think after discussing those wonderful monsters and those wonderful core rule books, I am absolutely knackered out. I've got a level of exhaustion and I'm in need of a long rest. Oh dear. Right, it goes without saying, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this week. We will look to have you on again very, very soon to discuss more about D&D. You've brought to the table the last few weeks stuff about spells and monsters and classes, so hopefully the people at home are learning a lot from our pods. I've had some really lovely messages and feedback. Lots of people are following us on Spotify as well as other podcast platforms. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it. We have got a Discord as I have put in the description, but you can find us on YouTube, on Twitch as well. So yeah, just get involved, and we look forward to having you join us on another pod very, very soon.
Thank you for having us. Look out for dust muffins, everyone.
Have a happy, healthy week.
Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
Is that going to be my catchphrase now?
I shall sign off now. Have a happy, healthy week.
Yeah. You stay classy, San Diego. But seriously, bye all. Thanks, gents.
Toodles.
Bye.